Hey guys, welcome to the Vendas B2B Summit. Today we have another very special international speaker. His name is Gabe Larsen. Gabe is VP of Inside Sales Labs, a division of InsideSales.com. He's the host of the #1 ranked Playmaker podcast. We will link it here below. Gabe joined InsideSales.com with over 15 years of experience in revenue generation, from helping financial clients price and trade complex derivatives to helping multinational organizations penetrate new markets. As director of Inside Sales Labs, Gabe's expertise has helped over 200 clients solve the biggest problems in the sales acceleration space. Gabe has also established himself as an international expert, speaker, and thought leader by writing and speaking about inside sales and its ability to drive predictable revenue. Gabe, thank you very much and welcome to the summit.
Hey, yeah, appreciate it. Excited. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing down there in Brazil and happy to participate.
Thanks. Have you ever been here to Brazil?
No, my wife lived down there for a couple of years, and she's been begging me to go down. She spent most of her time in a place called Belo Horizonte.
Yeah.
She says I need to get down there, but we never have. So
I hope to have you here soon. Gabe, could you fill some gaps about your intro and tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Sure. I at the moment I'm with InsideSales.com and run what we call Labs. That is our research and best practice group. A lot of other marketing functions roll up under that. So once a month we do a research study on best practices or a lot of the data that we have. And then, I do a lot of consulting with clients to see if we can implement that data in an effective way. InsideSales.com, really a AI system of growth. It's a sales technology that uses AI to help people sell more. So that's kind of the basis of me and Inside Sales. Previous to this, I've jumped around. I didn't get down to South America, as I said, but I spent about 5 years overseas in the Middle East and did some consulting over there, and then was on both coasts here in the U.S. and did some banking with Goldman Sachs and some consulting with a company called Accenture. But I love being in the tech space, and boy, I love talking about sales, so I'm glad to jump on today.
Great, Gabe. So let's start talking about cadences. Cadence is a sales industry buzzword. Many people are talking about, but not everybody knows what it actually means, especially here in Brazil, because it's kind of a new concept here too. So I love your definition of cadences. It's a sequence of activities to increase contact and qualification. And you guys did a lot of research on it. So how can we create a winning sales cadence and improve contact rates? It's a big challenge for us here. Oh, I think it's everywhere.
It is. It's funny. I was just talking, as everyone moves on to bigger and better things, cadence is so foundational. And again, people refer to as different items. Some people call it sales plays, some people call it a sequence, some people just call it activities, some people call it a sales. So whatever you call it, we did try to standardize the definition. One of the reasons we did that is based on some research, right? We actually went out and looked at about 9,000 companies, and we studied over about 15,000 cadences, almost 150,000 activities, just to figure out what the heck is going on with cadence and what should people be doing with it? Because right now, just like you said, definition's a little bit vague, but also just what is optimal and what are people doing? So our definition, there was a lot of thought put into it. It's this sequence. So a sequence means there's some data or some thought put into it. A sequence of activities, and there's different types of activities that can be in a cadence. And truthfully, there's not 7, there's just 6 of them. I couldn't get my fingers there. Just 6 activities that can be included in the cadence. That's going to be phone, voicemail, email, social, text, and direct mailer. Those are all 6 activities that can be included in a cadence. Now, there's 2 primary goals of a cadence. One is just to get in contact with somebody. That's the door opening. I just got to initiate a conversation. So a good cadence gets you more conversations, but a great cadence does more than that. It actually helps you qualify people, because when you get on with somebody, or even if you don't get on with somebody, these different activities educate people further and further down the sales funnel, so that when you do interact with them, you're to a place of actual better qualification. So that's kind of the fundamental premise of where we started. And then really when we dove into the data, we found that when it comes to a great sales cadence, there's really 5 elements that companies need to be thinking about in order to really just maximize or win when it comes to building and optimizing their sales cadence.
And what are those aspects? 5 aspects.
I was waiting for that question. I just seeing if you were going to say it.
I was sleeping.
So those 5 are attempts, media, duration, spacing, and content. And I'll just spend, just a minute on each of those. Attempts is just the total number. And the funny thing is we came out with this research. I had so many people come back to me and say, hey, with a lot of companies, I thought of it as only like number of attempts and duration as an example. I didn't even think kind of about diving into the other. So it is important. If I was going to coach you, I would literally sit down and say, let's think about all 5 elements. So attempts is just total number of touches throughout the entire period. Media is going to be the pattern that you use. So think about, am I going call, email, call? Am I going call? Am I going social? How am I kind of mixing and matching the different touches? The duration is just going to be the length of time from the very first activity to the very last activity. Spacing is going to be the time between each activity. And then last but not least is the content. And content has kind of an asterisk next to it because it's the messaging utilized within the email, within the voice message. And this oftentimes can be, it just has such an exponential value. You can send one email with great content, and that's all you need to do. So those are the 5 elements. And believe it or not, there's actually, standards of what people are doing on each of these. And we're learning more and more about best practices as people start to build and optimize their sales cadence.
Yeah, great. We here in Brazil just the last 2 years had a lot of sales startups in this area of cadence. So it's something that we're just starting to talk more about, and more companies starting to test, and now we're starting to have some benchmarks. But how can I decide if the cadence is going to have 5 touches or 12 touches, or what are the elements that we have to take in consideration?
Yeah, I mean, it's so you basically, at least the way I kind of coach people, I say, look, when it comes down to it, what you want to be thinking about is, number one, figuring out just where you are in comparison with like industry average, right? I think that's something that's kind of a nice place to say, if this is where the market is, where am I? Then you've got to actually test your way into optimal. Now we are starting to see some best practices emerge, but this is still a little bit fuzzy. And again, this is why I find cadence so interesting. We all start to know this word, but everybody just kind of starting to throw darts at a dartboard. I mean, this research that we did with these, about 10,000 companies, had so many people reach out and say, for the first time, there's some data behind cadences. It used to just be, again, kind of shooting and guessing. So I would put those 2 steps in. One, benchmark yourself. Figure out where you are in comparison with the market in general. Then number 2, I'd start to look at some best practices and then test your way into what actually works for you. Because again, even though I show you a study, we look at 10,000 companies and it's fantastic. The bottom line is you've got to figure out with your ideal target audience what's working and what's not working. Those would kind of be 1, 2 step punch that I would probably recommend.
Great. And have you seen companies there in the US applying this cadence concept that is usually applied to the outreach phase in follow-ups, like having standardized number of touches and channels to the follow-up later on the process?
Yeah, I mean, typically cadence is best utilized. Again, remember those kind of 2 goals of a cadence: to increase conversations or to educate a buyer. And so certainly the most common place is when you haven't ever talked to anybody, right? You're just trying to go after somebody cold. Very common places when somebody has been an inbound lead, where they maybe downloaded something, and then you follow up with them there. Another great time for a cadence is when an appointment has maybe fallen through. Because again, what are you trying to do? You lost that person. You can't get a hold of them. And what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to, again, get a conversation and educate them. So if an appointment doesn't hold, that's a great bucket to run a cadence on. And then very similar, actually, when you lose a deal. If a deal basically is lost or won for different reasons, that becomes a potential bucket. Typically more obviously the lost. If you lose somebody, you go back through that bucket 3 months later, you try to get back in contact with them, educate them. and start them to reinitiate themselves in the sales pipeline. So I'd probably say, initial prospecting, appointments that didn't hold, and deals that didn't close. Those are probably the three places I'd go, because truthfully, when you're in an active conversation, there's no need to get more conversations or to educate more. That's what your demos are for. That's what your presentations are for, etc. So those would be my three use cases for Gabe.
Great. I listened to your interview that you gave to Cast for Closers, a Brazilian podcast produced by friends of mine from the time around a year ago. And you talk a little bit about the future of cadences. You talk about predictive cadence and content, and probably like we would have stores for best practice that you could just plug into your CRM. Do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, I think the three trends you'll see in cadence as we go forward. There's more. There's plenty, but let me just list out a couple. One is we got to finish out the communication methods, the modalities, right? So you are in a big, you're in a big no-no zone if you're just cold calling, if you're just doing social, or if you've become an email marketer. The beauty of a cadence is that, again, there's 6 channels that you can use right now. A lot of people argue that there's 7 because video is coming on so fast, but truthfully, video is not a channel by itself. It's embedded in an email. It's embedded in a text message. It's embedded potentially in a landing page. So that's not a channel by itself. So outside of video, there's 6 channels. Until you're using all of those, you're not really optimizing your cadence. That would be number 1. Number 2 is, again, just more research. Right now when it comes to cadence, and this goes into the predictive cadence element, we're the furthest along when it comes to having done any research on cadence. Other people are just kind of spitballing and throwing it out there. So we should be able to very easily define for this type of buyer persona, this type of cadence should basically, be utilized, or this type of cadence is most often utilized to see success, and it may be a combination of different things. We have a research study right now where we've been trying to dive into that. We've looked at, you can imagine all the different sequences, right? So I can do a call, an email, and a voicemail. I can do a call. There's a lot of different sequences that you could do with the outputs, but I don't think we're too far off from predictive cadence. And I won't get to, I'll just mention these 2 others. With predictive cadence, you're going to find that I think people are going to move from, the cadence becomes actually more important than almost the tool itself. So someone like InsideSales.com that offers a sales cadence tool to basically contact and qualify your prospects, it's a great tool. But really, it's the play. It's the cadence itself and the messaging and the sequence and the design of it that becomes almost the secret sauce. So I assume you're going to see more companies trying to produce optimal cadences that can sit on top of these types of plays. And then maybe I just lastly, certainly more to hit on with cadence, but just the content piece. Email you can go so deep on. But think about, one of the features we're embedding in our platform right now is this idea we call neural send, which as a sales rep, I obviously have the ability to schedule an email and send an email. You can do that in our platform and others. But who's to say when it's best, when a CEO is actually going to engage with that email? Well, what if I could tell you I've been studying that email against other clients who have been sending emails to that exact person, and I know through data that person engages with email most often at 6:52 p.m. Central Time. When you send that email, I can recommend for you that this email basically is then sent at the optimal time. It'll be engaged. It's small things like that, but when it comes to content and optimizing those portions, what you say in an email, when you send it, when you schedule a phone call, there's data inside the AI portion in data. Again, that's a little bit mixed in with the predictive, but see the data just playing a huge role in cadence as it goes forward.
Great. Looking forward to more research about it. So let's talk about ABM and ABS or AV everything. Everywhere you turn right now, it feels like something's being written about it. And account-based approaches, it's not new, but of course now we have analytics and automation that is bringing something new to this methodology. But What has
Right.
actually changed in the past few years in marketing sales to big accounts?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically the reason you're talking more about account-based sales is really probably four things. One is I do think there's an indication that the buying group has changed, right? I mean, you're seeing as people continue to move upstream, I'm not just selling to one person in a company. I am selling to more and more and more, and the data's begun to back that. Some people would argue that's always been the case, but certainly the research would suggest that that is being really cemented now more so than ever before. Number two, I think there's technology, right? I mean, again, a company like InsideSales.com, a company like Terminus. I mean, there's an ability to go so targeted where I can actually send an email with a platform like ours, and when someone opens that email or downloads that email or clicks through and goes to my website, all of that information is captured, which becomes a reason to start to think about maybe following up on them. And you're getting activity data and intent data, and then I can retarget them, with ads on LinkedIn or Facebook. And so part of it, I think, is just the technology that's just allowed us to get very much more targeted in who we want to go after, and truthfully, if they're even interested to us or not. Number three, certainly from our data and research, we're seeing that more and more companies are going upstream. I mean, they're wanting bigger deals. The SMB space, although it's fun, and I certainly love that space, selling to kind of mom and pop shops, they maybe don't stick around as long, and they churn a little bit more. And so as companies move upstream, they got to go more targeted. And last but not least, I feel like, there's this push on millennials, and I don't mean to go too far into this, but, millennials are just not going to say they're going to be a telemarketer. They're just not going to do 300 phone calls a day. They want to be agile. They want to kind of follow their own process that leads them to results. And so I think they've rejected in some ways a real structured approach to selling, and they want to kind of be a little more lenient. And again, if I'm talking to 7 people at a company, we're not going to see a linear sales process. We're going to see a couple people are in stage 3 and one person's in stage 1. So between that buying group and the millennials wanting some of that flexibility, I think those would be 4 reasons that we're seeing this account-based sales thing just continually talked about. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere soon. But again, the pendulum always swings. I've been doing sales for 15 years now. I mean, I did account-based sales 15 years ago. I thought it was very new to get into high-velocity sales. And now people are kind of pushing that aside and saying that's not as good. The truth of it is, you guys, there's a place for both of them. Think of account-based focusing more on quality. Think of high-velocity focusing more on quantity. And I say, why do one or the other? Don't you want quality and quantity? I mean, that's the foundation of sales. So I'm a believer in trying to maximize and use both levers wherever possible.
Great. And you guys have a great case study about it, because gifting plays an important role in ABM. You guys at Inside Sales.com ran a very successful play, the Starbucks coffee play.
That's right. Yeah, that's
a story. So just so we understand better how to execute this kind of strategy.
Yeah, we've become a little bit famous for the Starbucks coffee play. It's something that people reach out to us, quite often about. Again, it's a test in part of labs. One of the things we do is, we'll do research and we'll do tests. One of the things we wanted to figure out was just the how strong it is to be using direct mail in your cadence strategy. It certainly works a lot better, or it appears to work a lot better in an account-based or in a relational sale, meaning, and I define that as, just more decision makers, bigger deal size, longer sales cycle, typically targeting, maybe segments that are a little bit higher. But basically, we just came up with the cadence, and we tested 2 different ones. One basically led with a Starbucks coffee card and kind of a branded coffee mug, and then it had kind of a sequence of events after to follow up and see if we could open the door and get that conversation. And then we built some other cadences that didn't include that coffee mug and didn't include some of the direct mail pieces. And we just sent it out to a couple hundred prospects and let the results tell us what was working and what wasn't. And the numbers just don't lie. I mean, in a short amount of time, even for us, because our average deal size is quite big, and our sales cycles, also quite large. It's kind of a long sales cycle. But in under 3 months, we closed a couple $100K. We built almost $1 million in pipeline. We got such good feedback tying in our message with the creativity of the direct mailer. And so that's something we've been building into our platform because, again, you got 6 ways to reach out. And if you're not thinking about text message and you're not thinking about direct mail, I'm not saying it's for you, but if it's not even on your radar, you got to test it. So that's the Starbucks coffee play. And the results, again, speak for themselves. Just fantastic, fantastic results.
And do you guys keep doing or just trying new things like new gifts or you just keep doing because it's working? How do you guys are working?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, truthfully, after that, we did a full research study on using direct mail in sales. It was the first study of its kind. We actually asked 500 decision makers how they're thinking and reacting to direct mail. Oh my goodness, so interesting. We basically found out that there's multiple levels of direct mail, and I kind of thought through this, but not a lot. I won't go too much into it, but you certainly have physical goods, but think about gift cards. Think about just regular cards. You got generic, you got personalized. So there's these different approaches you can take to direct mail. So we've started testing different approaches. And one of the recent ones that we did was we basically just tested, and I won't go too much into it, but it's so great. We basically took 2 audiences, very much like an 80 split test. And we just used as a card, a physical card, not a gift or anything like that, but a card. And we had a picture and a note on it. And then we had a follow-up cadence after that. We basically did the exact same thing with email. The first email looked exactly like the card, the same picture and the same message, and then it had the exact same cadence after it, basically alluding to, was it better to start with an actual note, physical, or was it better to start with an actual email and then have the same sales cadence? Long story short, just sending a card and having the exact same cadence led to basically a 3x in results in the conversation and appointment numbers.
Wow.
I mean, that's just huge, right? I mean, and again, don't shoot me. I'm just the messenger. I'm just telling you what the data said, sending it to a couple hundred people. So, and that then begged the question, how deep do you need to go on gifts? Because in the study, people said they didn't want to see gifts basically, under, I can't even remember, $10, I think it was, $10 US. But when we saw such value from the cards, again, that's such a low cost. I mean, those cards were 75 cents. We sent them to a couple hundred people, and the results were pretty strong. So basically begs the question, how deep do you want to go, and are you testing different methodologies?
It's probably more about the intent than the gift itself, right? It's just doing something that people got surprised. It's not something common. You receive a card, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just having a handwritten note appears to be one of the most powerful, both from the data and from the survey. When we asked busy decision makers which type of gift they were most likely to respond to, again, and it's funny because, you may have some older salespeople who listen to this and say, are they kidding? A handwritten note? I did that 30 years ago. Well, all great themes come back. Again, you love account-based sales right now. I promise high-velocity sales will make its way back sooner rather than later. It's just the way it's all about being different. So.
Great, Gabe. Thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure to have you here at our summit, where people can find more about you and Inside Sales Labs.
Yep. So you can definitely go check out labs at labs.insidesales.com. We do just kind of feedback sessions on our research, mini courses that people can dive into to learn about cadence and some of the things we're discovering from our different tests. And you can find me. I'm somewhat active on social, so you can find me on LinkedIn or certainly go to insidesales.com to learn more.
Great. Okay, thank you very much again, and I hope to see you here in Brazil soon.
Man, looking forward to it. Take care.
Bye-bye.